A billionaire tired of gold diggers and masks gives three women in his life a limitless credit card: his girlfriend, his chief administrator, and his maid. What they choose to do with it reveals more than he ever expected: vanity, betrayal, and one act of quiet compassion that would lead him not just to love, but to a home he never knew he needed. Hello, family. Welcome to Classic Folktales. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The hum of the city seemed a million miles below the glass walls of the penthouse. Up here, in the sterile quiet of his gilded cage, Alastair David felt a familiar chill. He was a titan of the tech world, a man whose name was synonymous with innovation and immense wealth, yet he was utterly alone. The faces that surrounded him daily were masks, each one reflecting a distorted version of his own fortune back at him. He was exhausted by the transactional nature of his relationships, a world where affection was a commodity and loyalty had a price tag. In these quiet, lonely moments, he often thought of his late mother, a woman who taught him that the only true currency was kindness, a lesson that seemed lost in the echoing halls of his life. Two figures loomed large in his mind as the primary architects of his isolation. First was his girlfriend, Talia Brooks, a woman whose beauty was as striking as her affection was shallow. Their relationship was a ledger of luxury purchases, her whispers of love directly proportional to the carat weight of the diamonds he bought her. She saw him not as a man, but as a key to a world of opulence she felt she deserved. Then there was Brenna Hayes, his chief administrative officer. Brenna was sharp, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. Her loyalty was a carefully constructed performance, a strategic play in a long game where Alastair was merely a stepping stone to a higher throne. She didn't want his heart, she wanted his empire. Amidst this sea of opportunism, there was one person who stood apart: his maid, Willow Chen. Willow was a quiet presence, moving through his vast home with a gentle efficiency that was almost invisible. He remembered an instance a few months prior when he'd accidentally overpaid her for the week. The next day, she had waited by the door, the extra cash held delicately in her hand, insisting she couldn't possibly keep what wasn't rightfully hers. That small act of honesty was the only flicker of genuine decency he had witnessed in years. It was a stark contrast to the grasping hands that surrounded him. Driven by a desperate need for truth, Alastair made a radical decision. He cleared his entire schedule for the next 3 days, citing a sudden need for a personal retreat. Then, he summoned the three women. To Talia, Brenna, and Willow, he presented a simple black card, an unlimited, untraceable credit card, with a single instruction: use it for whatever you need for the next 3 days. It was a test, a wild gamble to see what their hearts truly desired when given absolute freedom. The 3 days that followed became a lens through which Alastair viewed the true character of the women in his life. The first set of alerts came from Talia, and they came in a torrential flood. Her spending was a whirlwind of pure, unadulterated vanity. She chartered a private yacht for a day party, documented meticulously for her social media followers. She swept through designer boutiques on Rodeo Drive, emerging with armfuls of bags containing couture gowns and exotic skin handbags. She rented a fleet of luxury cars for her friends and booked the most exclusive table at a Michelin-starred restaurant, all to fortify her status as a queen of the social scene. In just over 48 hours, she had burned through more than $100,000, each purchase a testament to her bottomless ego and a glaring confirmation of Alastair's worst fears. She wasn't building a life, she was curating a brand, and he was simply the sponsor. Brenna, the strategist, was far more discreet. Her spending was minimal, almost negligible at first glance. There were no lavish parties or shopping sprees. Instead, the card was used for a series of quiet, expensive lunches at discreet downtown bistros. But Alastair's surveillance was more than just financial. He saw who she was meeting with: top executives from his fiercest competitors, the very people orchestrating a hostile takeover attempt he had been fighting for months. Brenna wasn't spending his money, she was leveraging his power. She used the card not for consumption, but for connection, buying access and positioning herself for a lucrative exit. She was investing in her betrayal, using his resources to secure a future where she would be standing on the ruins of his company. The calculated coldness of her ambition sent a shiver down his spine. It was a betrayal far deeper than Talia's shallow greed. Then there was Willow. Alastair watched her transactions with a growing sense of astonishment. The total charges over 3 days amounted to less than $1,000. The first charge was at a local grocery store, a modest bill for pantry staples. The largest transaction, for several $100s, was a direct payment to a local oncology clinic. Puzzled, Alastair had his team investigate. They discovered the payment covered the outstanding chemotherapy bill for an elderly neighbor in Willow's building, a man she checked on daily. The rest of the money was spent on bulk food supplies, rice, beans, canned goods, which he later saw her distributing at a community kitchen where she spent her afternoon volunteering. She used the immense power in her hands not to elevate herself, but to give dignity and relief to others. She saw a world of need, and, given the chance, she chose to heal a small part of it. The quiet compassion of her actions stood in stark, beautiful contrast to the noise of the others. The evening of the third day, the air in Alastair's minimalist dining room was thick with tension. He had summoned all 3 women for dinner, and they sat around the polished mahogany table, each with a different expectation. Talia was preening, expecting a proposal or another grand gift. Brenna was composed, her face a mask of professional calm, ready to report on a productive few days. Willow was visibly nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, convinced she was about to be fired. Alastair let the silence stretch before he finally spoke, his voice low and devoid of emotion. He projected the spending reports onto a large screen on the wall, a digital chronicle of their choices. He turned to Talia first. $100,000 on parties and purses, Talia. You didn't buy a single thing of lasting value. You bought attention. He clicked a button, revealing images of her ostentatious social media posts. Your affection has always been for sale. Consider this your final payout. Talia's face contorted with rage, her vanity wounded. She sputtered insults and threats before storming out, leaving a trail of shattered pride in her wake. Next, he faced Brenna. He displayed the records of her meetings, the names of his competitors stark against the white screen. You didn't spend my money, Brenna. You sold my trust. You used my name to build a bridge to my enemies. Brenna's composure finally cracked. She stood up, her face pale with fury and defiance. You treat people like assets, Alastair. I just learned to play your game better than you. With that, she too was gone, her calculated betrayal exposed. Finally, Alastair's gaze fell on Willow, who was trembling, tears welling in her eyes. And you, Willow, he said, his voice softening. You spent almost nothing. He showed her transactions, the groceries, the donation, the supplies for the kitchen. Why? She looked down, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. I'm so sorry, Mr. Vance, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I thought you were firing me, and this was some kind of severance. It felt wrong to use it for myself when I know people like Mr. Henderson next door, who are in real pain. I couldn't. Her confession, so full of genuine empathy and devoid of self-interest, shattered the last of his cynicism. He saw in her tears not guilt, but a profound and beautiful honesty. He was deeply, irrevocably moved. In that moment, the entire charade of the test felt cheap and manipulative. Alastair walked over to Willow and gently apologized, not just for the test, but for the cold, transactional world he had built around himself. That dinner was the beginning of something new. Their relationship began not with grand romantic gestures, but with quiet conversations, shared meals, and a mutual respect for the values his mother had taught him. He saw the world through her eyes, a world not of assets and liabilities, but of people and purpose. Instead of showering her with luxury, he recognized her true passion. He hired a team of advisors to help her establish and manage the David Foundation. Willow, in turn, co-founded the Human Dignity Initiative. One of Alastair's vacant commercial properties, once a symbol of idle wealth, was transformed into a state-of-the-art women's shelter, a beacon of hope and safety. The sterile mansion, once a prison of loneliness, began to fill with life. Laughter echoed in halls that had only known silence. Friends from the community kitchen, a world away from his corporate circle, were now frequent guests. Alastair realized that his true empire wasn't measured in stock prices or market share, but in the warmth and purpose that now filled his home. His true wealth was the love he was building with Willow. They married quietly a year later, in a small ceremony surrounded by the people whose lives they had touched. Soon after, their daughter was born, her laughter the sweetest sound Alastair had ever known. Holding her in his arms, he finally understood. The test had revealed a fundamental truth. Greed and vanity demand everything and offer nothing, but love and kindness ask for nothing and give everything. In the quiet compassion of his former maid, Alastair David had finally found the one thing his billions could never buy: a home. Thank you for watching.